Welcome back, aliens. My name is Avin Reddy, and let's continue with the series on NoSQL. Now, when we talk about NoSQL, we have different types of NoSQL databases we can use, right? We can use tabular, key value, graph, and document type, right? And then we started with tabular, in which we are talking about a Cassandra database, which is a distributed database. And the platform we are using here is DataStax, where we are trying to run examples. So till this point, we were able to create a database, and you can see we have a database here, which is Telusko. And the language we are using here is called a CQL language. And you can guess it is Cassandra query language. The way you use SQL, it's almost similar, but of course there are some differences as well. And in the last video, we have talked about it, right? Now here, let's try to learn more about CQL, and when you create a table and when you insert data, what kind of data, what type of data you can work with. Of course, there are tons of types available, not exactly tons, but then we have so many types available. We'll be saying mostly used types here. So this is where basically we'll write our scripts, right? So the first thing we need here is we want to make sure that we use a keyspace. So keyspace we are using here is, I guess, I'm not sure, I forgot the keyspaces we are working with. So the way you can do that is by saying describe keyspaces. And you can see we have so many key spaces available, and I guess we are using NoSQL demo. Let's try that. So I will say use NoSQL demo. Semicolon. Okay, so we are into that key space, and in this key space I want to see how many tables we have. So I will say, okay, so one of the table we are working with here is alien, right? So that's the only table available, and you can see we have so many settings, and we'll see them later. So at this point we know that we are working with alien, but I don't want to use that table, so I will just drop that table. So I will say drop table aliens, and that's how you drop a table, right? Aliens. Okay, and it will take some time, of course, and it will be dropped ultimately. Now the thing is, see, when you work with databases, when you work with any kind of database, it's very important that when you use those databases, it has to provide you something called performance, consistency, right? That's what you look for a database, right? Now Cassandra says it's a distributed database, and it provides you high performance. But that also depends upon how you create your tables, right? Now we have a topic called data modeling, which we'll talk about that later. As of now, we have to make sure that when you create a table, you should know what you're doing, right? So the first thing you will do here is you will create a table, and will understand the type of data you can store. So let's create a table. First of all, do we have this table still there? I got some error, but I guess it is done. Table got deleted. Let's verify. So I will say select star, and you can see it says alien does not exist. So that's fine. We don't have that table as of now. So let's clear this, and now let's create a table. Now what table I want to create here? So I will say create a table. I want to get the same table again. This time we'll say alien, not aliens, or maybe aliens makes sense, right? Because we have so many aliens. Okay, now when you create aliens, so what we are trying to achieve here, of course, for every database, we have some use case, right? And that's why you have a database here. So let's say you are creating a hiring platform, right? So example, if I want to hire people, and of course, when I want to hire a technological person or a programmer, I will call them as aliens. So we are creating a website or a platform where we can hire people. So we have to search a programmer or a person or an alien with their technology. Of course, I want to create this table where I have the alien name, the technology they work with, their location, because sometimes you want to work offline, not online. So you want to do it in physical locations. So the nearby location would be helpful. And maybe you want to store when they created their account. Maybe you want to see what is their previous experience, what companies they have worked for, how many years, and are they available to connect now, right? So are they available online? So something like this we want to see in this thing. So what we'll do is let's create this table, and we'll go step by step. The first thing you want to create here is, I want to say the A name, that will be of type text. Now we are starting with a text format. Now when you say text, it is simply a string or a varchar, which we normally use. So you can store text here. We can also go for ASCII, but then that is very specific to ASCII format. So let's use text, which supports everything, right? So you can store any data you want, any string data you want. So that's done. We got a name. The next thing you want, maybe you can go with the tech they are working with. So now I know one person can work with multiple technology, but let's say I'm good with Java, so I will mention Java there, right? So there's something like this. Maybe I know multiple technologies, but then I'm good in one technology, something like this. But of course, you can make a collection out of it. The collection of technology, you know, maybe a list or a set, that should make sense. As of now, let's keep it simple, text. The next thing you want to mention is the location. Of course, we can go with a location string, but since we already worked with string here, maybe this time let's go with a zip code. Now, why I'm going with a zip code? Because I want to use an integer type here. So basically you have text and you have integer. In fact, in integer itself, we have multiple types, right? Let me just list down those types here. So basically we have integer, which we are using here. Now integer will have its own size. So integer has size, which is 32-bit. Then we have big int. You can go with big int as well, which has size of 64-bit. Then we have small int, which is 16. Now depend upon your requirement, right? How big you want your data to be. So if you think your data can be stored in integer, please use that. If you think you have a bigger string, you can go with big int. You can use small int first if you want to reduce the size. In fact, you can also go with tiny int, which only takes, you can guess it right, which is 8-bit, right? And then we have variable length int as well. It has a variable precision basically. Apart from this, we can also go with a float type. Now, why we need a float type? Of course, if you want to store a decimal point number, which is 32-bit, decimal point basically, let's say 5.4 or something like that, if you want to store a point values. You can also go with double if you have a bigger value. Double would take around 64-bit. And of course, if you have a variable precision, you can go with the decimal type as well. Now, basically, this is what we normally use, majorly used integer, small int if you want a float, because 32-bit, I guess it's enough. Or maybe if you use double, that also works fine. Apart from this, we also have text, which we have seen. We also have ASCII, right? So this thing we can use. Now, we have some more example. We have timestamp as well if you want to maintain the time. At what point you are doing something. If you want to say, hey, this is when you created an account, this is when you last visited, something like that if you want to store in your tables. Now timestamp will have both. It will have date and time. But what if you want only date and time? In that format, you can use a separate type, which is date and time. These are two different types you can use. Date will only store date, of course, and time will store time. Now the only thing is when you store data in Cassandra, remember this, always use time zones. So we'll not be using that example here, but then when you do it, try to search how do you use timestamp with time zone. And if you know the answer, use the comment section to write this. Now, why time zone is important? See, Cassandra is a distributed database, right? So when you say it is distributed, your server, your nodes basically, so Cassandra works with nodes, your node where you are storing your database or where you're storing your data can be at any location. It can be in US, Europe, Australia, India, any Asian country. So when you have your distributed locations like this, you have to make sure that when you store data, you're specifying your time zone as well so that you can actually map it. Now, what if you want to go for some unique data, unique format? So normally every row will have a unique value, right? One thing you can do is you can normally, when you create IDs, it should be unique. It can be a surrogate key. Surrogate key basically means it's an extra key, extra column for your table, which is only there to have some unique values. So normally what happens, when you have a table and it has multiple columns, example, name, technology, maybe which year you completed your graduation, all this data, right? This can be repeated, right? Example, Navin Reddy, we can have multiple Navin Reddys in this world. Technology, I work on Java, so we can have multiple people working on Java. Likewise, everything is repeated, right? What if you want to have something unique? One thing you can do is if you can use email ID as a column, but that becomes a natural key because the column was there and you are making it unique as a primary key. So that's a natural primary key. But what if you don't have a unique column in your table? In that case, you can combine multiple columns or create a separate column, which will be a surrogate key, which is only there to give you uniqueness, right? Maybe serial number, right? And most of the companies have employee IDs, right? If you list a movies, it will be movies ID. In the same way, here, you can use a type called UUID, which is Universal Uniquely Identified Number. You can use that as well. Then we also have something called Boolean. Now, any guess why we have Boolean? If you want to specify something is true or something is false, you can use Boolean type. What if you want to store binary data? Maybe a big object in a binary format, you can use blob, which is binary large object. Apart from this, we have very important type, which we already talked about at the start, which is collection. So if you have a collection of data you want to store, maybe someone has a multiple email address, you want to store all, maybe someone knows multiple frameworks, you want to specify that in one cell or one column, then you can use collection as well. So we have multiple types here. We can use list, we can use set, and we can use map. So let's use this thing in the example we are working with. So we'll use one by one, right? So that you will understand them completely. Okay, so basically we have zip, which is of type int, right? And then I also want a unique column here. So as you can see, we have 3 columns here and they are not unique. So in this case, what you can do is you can use another type, which is ID. And the only purpose of this column is to have something unique. So I can say UUID, and every row need to have a unique value, right? So this is that. And I want to make this one. In fact, let's also use one more, which is experience, right? Let's specify experience as float because that's my decimal value. And that's it. These are the columns you want to specify. And then at the end, you have to also do one more thing. You have to mention the primary key. And in this case, I'm making a primary key as my ID, right? In fact, this thing actually matters, what you make your primary key as, because we have something called partition key, clustering key, and which will make much more sense later. As of now, let's just to keep it simple, let's go with this one. And as you can see, we got our table ready to work with. And I just want to see the types, how it looks like. So I will say select star from aliens. So you can see we have 5 columns and ID is our primary key. That's why it's a different color. Now let's insert some values. So just to be very quickly, I will just type it fast. Basically, we want to assign values, which is ID. Then we have to specify a name. Then we are specifying the experience, tech, and the zip value, the zip code, right? Okay, now these are the columns we have, and we are specifying the values as well. And I will enter the values in the next row. So here, the first value I want to assign here. Now, how do I specify the ID? Now, this ID is a big value, right? It will be hexadecimal value. And you can specify the unique value by explicitly mention that here. Okay, so you don't have to use single quote. But then I don't want to generate those IDs by myself, right? And there's one more thing I forgot to mention. If you want a unique value, you can go with serial numbers as well, right? Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically what we're doing here is we are storing our database in multiple locations, right? It's difficult to maintain the count because when you update, you're updating the one server at a time, right? So you will update this server and the data will pass to all the servers with the help of Gossip protocol, of course. It will take some time, right? So how do you maintain that number? So instead of maintaining the sequence numbers, we can use unique number, which will be different. Of course, there's no guarantee it will be unique, right? There might be some chances it might get repeat, but it's a big number. The chances are very less. So I want to generate that number and I want the help of Cassandra to do that. So there's a function called UUID and you can give a function brackets, non-brackets, and it will work. It will generate ID for you. The next thing you want to specify is a name. So this time I will go with a name, which is Naveen. Of course, I love my name. And we have to also mention the experience. Oh, that's the next column. I would say 5 years. And the technology, let's say Java. Now the location where I stay. So let's say 420989. I don't know which location it is pointing to, but that's the location. And I think, the experience is in float value, right? So let's go with 5.5, number of years of experience. And I will say enter. I think this should work. Oh, we got an error. It says alien does not exist. And that's what happens when you work with multiple type of databases, multiple names. It's aliens, not alien, right? So I will say enter and you got your first entry. Likewise, I will enter some more values just to show you that it is different. I will say Avni, that's my daughter. And she's only 2.5, but let's say experience of 10 years. That's what we're expecting from the freshers nowadays, right? You have to be experienced with 10 years in Python to get a job, right? Okay. And location, let's say some other location. And enter. So now we got 2 rows, right? Let's see if this got entered in the database. And you can see we got these entries here. And look at the ID. It's a big number, different numbers. And then you can see we got Avni, we got Naveen, and we got experience 10, 5.5, Python, and the location, right? So this is working. That's how you insert data. And we have used different types as of now. Okay. Now what else we want this from this table? So of course we have these 5 columns, right? I want to enter one more. I want to know when we created this account, right? So I want to add one more column, which is account created, right? So what we can do here is we can add one more column. So I can say alter table. That's how you add a new column. So you can say alter table and you can mention alien. So this is the table you're altering to, which is aliens. And then you are adding multiple columns. So how many columns I want to add? So I want to add basically when you created this account. I also want to know if you are available for chat now online on this platform. And what else? Let's add this too. So I will say add. And since I want to mention multiple columns, I can use a round bracket. I can mention created. Now what type I should be using here? So when you say you want to know when the account was created, so I want date and time. So you guessed it right, we have to use a timestamp. And then I want one more, which is available. Are you available for chat? I would say Boolean. Either you are available or you're not available. It's not like you're kind of free. You're either free or you're not available. Okay, so I will just use this and I think it should work. Enter. Okay, looks like you got those columns as well, and you got it, don't worry. Let's try this, and you can see we got 2 extra columns, which is null because by default, because we have not inserted the values for those 2 things. So once you got this column, we want to insert data, but this time we have 2 more extra columns to work with, right? So I will say zip code, and I also have the timestamp as of now, which is created. I want to insert that, and I also want to insert the status available. Are you available now? Okay, and then the values will be different. Of course, this time we'll go for some different names, not Avni. We'll use, let's say, Kiran, and the experience is, let's say, 7 in Android. Location does not matter actually. And then we have to enter more values, which is when it is created. So how do we insert a timestamp? So one thing you can do, you can manually insert the time value. So what's the format basically? So the format is you have to enter the year first. This is 22, and month is March, and the date is what? What's the date for today? Doesn't matter. So I will say 4. And then you have to also mention the time. So I will say 08, 07, 12. I don't know the current time as of now, but let's go with this. And that's it. So date and time, that's a format it follows. Okay, next we have to mention if you are available. So you can say true or you can say false. If you are online, it is true. I know that sounds weird. So every time you come online, you have to change databases. It doesn't matter actually for this example, but that's what it is. I will say enter. So it looks like it will work, and it is working. You can see we got timestamp as well. So that's timestamp, and you can say that's true, available. You can also say false if you're not available. So every time you can change that data if you wish. So we have seen timestamp, we have seen Boolean as well. And now let's work with collection. So how do you work with a collection type? How do you store multiple values? So what multiple values I want to store? So let's say I don't have an email column here. And in email, I don't want one email, I want multiple emails. Is it really possible? And the answer is yes, it is possible, right? We can have multiple email IDs. And we say optional email ID or secondary email ID. For that, you have to use a column, and it will have multiple values. So we can use a collection type called set. Now set can have multiple values. So the only thing is in set, all the values will be sorted by default, right? And you will not see the right order which you have inserted in. So I will show you what I mean by that. So what I will do here is I will alter this table again. And this time I want to add a column, which is emails. And emails will be of type what? So you have to say set, and in set you have to also mention what type of values you'll be having in that set. So it will be type of text. Of course, you can mention Boolean, you can mention whatever type you want to have. Boolean will not make sense because it has only have 2 values. Maybe you can specify numbers, phone numbers, right? So those things. The next thing you have to mention is maybe I want one more column where I can list the frameworks you have worked with. Example, let's say if you say you have worked on Java. So in Java, we have Spring, Hibernate, maybe Maven tool. Let's treat it as a framework for some time. And whatever frameworks you have in Java, right? So you can mention all those things. Maybe you can also say tools. That makes sense. Doesn't matter, right? So let's use a column name as frameworks. Just get the idea what I'm talking about. So multiple frameworks, right? And instead of using set, we can also use list. The difference between set and list is in set, you don't have the sequence maintained, the order of sequence you are inserting. All the values will be by default sorted. In terms of list, you will get the same order which you have inserted. Plus, you can also use index values to fetch a value, right? Index number 0, 1, 2. So we'll use list here, and we'll say text again. We have one more collection type, which is actually map. Now what map does is you can actually map 2 values. Example, in list, what you have is you have different values. Example, I can say Spring, Hibernate, Maven, Struts, and then every value here will be having an index value, right? So what I'm saying is something like this. We have a list, let's say list is Spring, then we have Maven, Hibernate, Struts. So basically we have 0, 1, 2, 3. So if you want to fetch a particular value, example, if I want to fetch Hibernate, we have to use index number 2, right? It's actually not a good way to assign a value. Of course, you can use this, but then what if you want to have a text as a key? I want to say, again, Spring, but then I don't want to use numbers here. Maybe I want to use a different key to represent this Spring. I would say web framework, build tool for database, or maybe something like ORM tool, maybe web. Okay, I have to use a different key, right? Maybe I can say this is web old. I don't know how many people use Struts as of now. I'm not using it, so I can use web old or web new. It's just that the keys has to be unique, right? So this is your keys, and these are the values. So what we're doing is we are achieving something called key value pair here with the help of map. So, but then we don't want to use, because we're already using frameworks for list, right? So what we'll do here is we'll specify the company and the number of years you have worked with, if that makes sense. So I can say previous jobs. And you can mention the type here. This is of type map. But then in map, you have to specify two different things. One is, the first one will be text, because the company name is text, and the number of years of experience, let's say int, right? So number of years of experience. And I guess this should work. Okay, we added some more columns, and you can see we have so many columns now. So this is empty, emails and previous jobs. So let's insert a new value. So we'll say values, and the new values is, the first thing you have to mention is UUID as a function. Then name, I would say name is Chirag. The next thing here is experience, right? I would say 4.9. That's a weird number. And the technology is, let's say, Java. Again, of course, you can repeat the technologies. And then I want to specify the zip code. I can use a random number. I don't care. And then next is created. Now, of course, you can specify the time in single quote, or you can use a function. You can use, let's say I want to specify the current time. When I'm inserting this data, I want to go with that time. You can use a special function called toTimestamp, and in bracket you have to pass a function called now. So basically, it will pick up the time and it will convert that time into timestamp, right? So it is now, which will insert the data for you, and then you have to also mention the available. Oh, there's one more thing which we forgot to mention here. Unfortunately, can't go back. So what I will do is I will purposely make a mistake here. I will say enter, which will give me some error, because I made a mistake here. So we have to specify two more things. Available, after this, we have to mention created available emails, and then we have to mention frameworks and previous jobs. Looks good. Now I will say the same thing which I did earlier, but this time same values, timestamp, done, available, false, emails. Now how do you mention emails? So basically, if you have multiple email IDs, you have to use curly brackets for the set. And let's say the first email ID is chirag@gmail.com. I'm not sure if this is the correct email, but let's go with that. Let's say I have one more, which is chirag@demo.com. So two email IDs, and then that's the email I have. Next, I have to specify the frameworks. Now for frameworks, we have to use a different brackets. Now we don't have to use curly brackets, we have to use square bracket, because that's a list. Now in this case, if you want to mention the list, I can specify the first one, which is Spring. Then the next one is, let's say, Hibernate, and let's say Studs as well. Okay, that's the framework. What else we have? We also have map, right? So what I will do here is I will say enter. Okay, now we have to use map. For the map, I would again use a curly brackets. Now why curly brackets? Why not the square bracket? It's because in map, we specify the key value, right? Where key is unique. It actually behaves like a set because it will be unique. So here I will specify the map. First company Chirag worked with is, let's say, Telusko for, let's say, 4 years. And the next company is, let's say, I don't know, in a random company, Rockfield. And you can see we have inserted the value. Let's verify, enter, and you can see we got the entry here. I'm just lowering the font size. Even if you can't read, that's okay. Just trust me. This is the UID. This is the name. Available, not available. This is the timestamp. This is the set. This is the float value. This is the frameworks you work with. This is the previous job, which is a map, and technology and zip code. So that's how you can insert different types of values. So yeah, that's it from this video. I hope you enjoyed. So what we have done till this point is we were able to create a table with different types of data type. We have text, integer, float, timestamp. We have used Boolean and list, set, and map. So that's it from this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section, and do subscribe for other videos. Bye-bye.